What's going on, Watchers World? I'm Franklin,
Tristan.
Anthony.
and we are the Watchers in the Basement. So, ladies and gents, this is a special, unique, inaugural episode. So, for the first time in Watchers Podcast Network history, we are covering sports. And this will be the first of many, many, many times and episodes. So, please join the fray. And then we have a new watcher as well. My boy Anthony, man. We 20 years in, man. What's going on with you, brother?
I'm good, man.
So we got fellow Raiders fan, man, in the vault to AFC West. You know what I'm saying? But no, but today, man, we want to talk about the AFC Championship game and NFC Championship game, along with some nuggets throughout the NFL season that we want to cover and talk about disappointments, successful stories, and a brief review preview of the Super Bowl between the Chiefs and the Eagles. But we'll do a more deep dive next week during Super Bowl week. So first, man, let's talk about the NFC Championship game. I want to lead with this because before we get to the Chiefs and Bengals, because there wasn't much to talk about with this game. It's kind of hard when a team loses 4 quarterbacks in the season and 2 quarterbacks in one game. But Tristan, what was your thoughts, man? Because there was a lot of hype with this game leading up to last Sunday. 2 top 5 defenses. Eagles led the league in 74 sacks. San Fran had a great defense as well with their vaunted pass rush. Bosa's probably going to win Defensive Player of the Year this year as well. So there's a lot to advertise in this game. Tristan, what was your thoughts, man, with that game going into it?
I mean, it was a good precursor to the AFC Championship game. I think like most people, we expected this to be a close game. We didn't expect, obviously, San Fran to lose both quarterbacks. But once, I mean, literally, I went to the garage. I went to go do something. I came back and Purdy was gone. And I had to rewind and I saw the hit and everything. And from that point, San Fran, it looked like their playbook was down to about 15 to 20 plays. And I think I think Kittle mentioned it severely decreased their playbook to about 15 plays. So, and you saw it. You saw a lot of screen passes. You saw them really, I think they ran the ball 6 to 7, 8 straight times at one point. And then eventually Josh Johnson got some intermediate passes going, but they weren't even looking past, 8 yards past the line of scrimmage at a certain point. And, with Philly in that pass rush, that's all they need to hear. It was pretty much over at that point because they could just kind of pin their ears back and just attack, drop 9, 10 in the box. And, therefore the 49ers to beat them, and they just couldn't, which was a shame because, I think a lot of us wanted to see what Brock Purdy could do in this moment, or I guess a lot of people were waiting to see if, his 15 minutes were going to run out against, that defense. And it was just again a chance to see it, and there's really not a ton of conversation about this game. I will say it's interesting that, Philly won this running away. Jalen Hurts did not play well. Missed a lot of throws early. Eventually kind of got it going in the second half. But this was the running game. This was the defense. And, of course, this was, the fact that they didn't really have to compete against an NFL quarterback after the first 5 minutes of that game.
I think what I find interesting in that game, man, is that because we talked about this offline, Tristan, in our group chat. We talked about, Glock Purdy. I think our boy Jarvis coined that phrase for him. And there were a lot of talk between us about what he does in this postseason. He won 7 straight starts from the regular season going into the postseason, or 6 straight starts. He had a winning streak. That started the game in Tampa where Garoppolo got hurt, and from there on, Purdy was the quarterback. But there was a lot of speculation of depending on how he did in the postseason, if he was going to be the reason why they made the Super Bowl and or won the Super Bowl. because there was a stat where Purdy had more 20-yard downfield throws than Garoppolo did the last 2 seasons, and that was an element in the Niners passing game that you hadn't seen in forever. And it makes me wonder, man, what could have been. I mean, I assume that Trey Lance and Purdy would go in and battling for the job, but it makes me wonder, had Purdy been a benefactor of that offense being supreme in this game in the Super Bowl, if Purdy would have went into that offseason in July as QB1. Anthony, man, what were your thoughts, man, with the Niners and the Eagles game going to this past Sunday?
Going in, man, I thought it was going to be like a close game. I thought like it was one of those matchups. It was like, oh, we get to see this defense against this defense. Like, which quarterback is Brock Purdy gonna ball out? Is Jalen Hurts gonna ball out? Like, I feel bad for. I feel bad for Kyle Shanahan. Like, has any coach had worse quarterback luck than Shanahan? Like, it doesn't matter who his quarterback is, they seem to always get hurt. Like, one of the reasons, and it's like, yeah, Jimmy Garoppolo got his limitations as a quarterback, but injury is one of the reasons you go and get a Trey Lance. Like, okay, we can't count on you to stay healthy. Let's go get this guy. Now, this guy gets hurt, then you get this, 7th round dude, and he's holding it together, and you're like, okay, Trey Lance still our guy, but at least we know this guy, like, what can he be? And then boom, he goes down, and it's like, I feel bad for him, because you could tell he's a hell of a coach, man. To have that system and have those guys just constantly be productive, and then every year it's just like, all right, we're gonna chop you down at the legs at the quarterback position, just time in and time out. So I think that's just, I feel for the dude on that. I kind of had, I think that game, going into that game, it was a toss up, man. Like you said, Jalen Hurts has not played spectacularly. He's not playing the way he was playing up until he missed those games towards the end of the season. So he really hasn't gotten his legs back under him. And that was a game that, because of that, you can really see the Niners win, being able to maybe win that game and keep it close, because they haven't been, the way he's playing, as dominant as you think the Eagles would have been. But once your quarterbacks go out, is nothing much you could do at that point, unless you just gonna throw all caution to the wind and say we go 5 wide, 5 go routes, and just keep chucking it down the field. If you're gonna stick to your game plan and what you have, which is the running game, when they know you can't throw it, you're not gonna throw it. You're basically playing with both hands tied behind your back.
Something I want to bring up too, man. It's always tough when you lose your QB1 in any game, especially the conference championship game. What threw me off, man, was the guy that came in for Purdy. If y'all don't know, Josh Johnson is 37 years old. He's our age. Josh Johnson once backed up Rob Johnson. You remember Rob Johnson with the Buccaneers?
You remember?
He's been in the game for a minute. So Shanahan, being a quarterback, guy that he is. And look, I'm sure Josh Johnson.
Josh Johnson, by the way.
Huh?
Oakland Tech's own cousin of Marshawn Lynch.
And I'm glad. Look, I'm sure Josh Johnson is a decent guy. I'm sure he's a swell person. That's the guy that you signed to back up Purdy. Well, there was no other guy like Nick. Like, they've had Nick Mullins, C.J. Beathard. They've had quality backups over the last few years, and this is the guy that you choose to back up Purdy. Like, it kind of threw me off, man. And Josh looked like a guy that was he looked like he was Mr. Irrelevant in that game. He looked like a deer in headlights, and I wonder if Shanahan didn't give much thought of, like, what if Purdy goes down. I had 2 other guys go down this past season. Why not get a guy that is somewhat good? I don't know what to say. Like Josh Johnson, his ability back in the day was to run and buy time. He's 37. Like, he's not that guy anymore. Yeah. He's not a guy that's gonna throw darts over the field and win with his accuracy and make anticipatory throws. That's not who he is. And his best trait is far behind him in his athleticism. So it made me wonder why he was so unprepared in the backup QB market with Josh Johnson. Go ahead, Tristan.
I mean, I wonder what that pool really looks like, especially this late in the season. If we can acknowledge that there are really only about 8 to 9 quarterbacks that we could legitimately say are good. When we start thinking about the backup market, like how depressed is that market? You know what I'm saying? Like, how depressed is the backup quarterback, especially in late December, January? I just don't think there's a ton of options there. You said Nick Mullins, and good God, we've seen that dumpster fire. I just don't think there's a ton of options. I mean, I'm sure there was somebody that Shanahan could have gotten better for that moment, but man, it's slim pickings at this point. And I feel for Josh Johnson because I'm pretty sure he never thought he was getting that game. If you really go back and look at Josh Johnson's resume, so he's a 15-year veteran, but like the word 15 and year and veteran are doing so much work. You know what I'm saying? Like, literally go look at his wiki. Like, it's like they signed him in like May and cut him in July. You know what I'm saying? Like, or they signed him in August, cut him in October. Like, very rarely does he finish a whole year or play like more than a few snaps. Like, it's an interesting thing to see. But yeah, man, Shanahan just got really caught out there with it's shitty luck. Like, this is just one of those years where literally every quarterback he put out there got hurt, and it just came at the worst time possible. But man, like I would love to see like Shanahan's Rolodex. Like, who are we before we land on Josh Johnson? Like, did Nick Mullins say, you know what? Actually, well, I wonder what Nick Mullins is doing right now. He's probably like in his whatever the fuck. Like, I'd rather do that than potentially get hit by, all these dudes on the Eagles D line.
Yeah. And you know what? The game was 31-7, but I mean, I think after losing that quarterback, they had 3 turnovers. A lot in the red zone or on their side of the field, which created short fields for the Eagles. Because the defense played well. It's just, and there was some questionable calls. I know Shanahan was upset with some of the calls, but again, man, when you have 3 turnovers, man, on your side of the field, and multiple personal foul penalties, and only I think they had 11 first downs overall to the Eagles 25 first downs. It just makes it very difficult. But I do want to talk about Jalen Hurts. He does not look right. This is the second straight week in a row that he missed A.J. Brown deep. He missed him in the Giants game as well, and he missed him by a lot. And I'm worried about his shoulder, because if a team like Kansas City can like take advantage and like load up the run and make him make deep seam throws or deep in routes, if he can hit those routes. I don't think it's obvious he's not healthy. He missed 3 games or 2 games towards the end of the season, which he probably would win MVP, who knows? But how do you think his arm going forward is going to look in 2 weeks, Anthony?
I mean, 2 weeks. I mean, we've seen people in that spread of championship game to, Super Bowl, heal up as much as you can and put on a show. But I mean, I think he's been under a 160 pass in the last 2 games. He's going to have to do something, because it doesn't matter how good your defense is. Patrick Mahomes is going to put up 30. Like, it's just what it is. So you're going to have to combat that in the Super Bowl. You're going to have to be able to put up points. And if you don't go up, even if you go up early, he's still got the potential to boom, boom, boom. Now all of a sudden it's a 3. You got to be able to consistently put up points. And if you can't hit big shots, especially against Kansas City secondary right now, with they're banged up. They got rookies all over the place.
Yeah.
You got to be able to take advantage of that, because if you don't, it's going to look, the score is going to look like it did for the Eagles against the Eagles. So he's gonna have to figure out a way, and they're gonna have to game up some stuff. If his arm isn't healthy and he can't hit deep shots, they're gonna have to game plan something to get guys open so that they can at least mid-range in midfield type stuff, whereas intermediate stuff and you got guys like Devontae Smith, they got the speed and the capability to take something short to the house, but you're gonna have to make Kansas City respect your ability to go deep. Otherwise, you're not gonna be able to put up enough points to stay with Kansas City.
Yeah, and I also worry about those RPOs. Their whole offense is built off those RPOs, and man, you take a couple hits early, like I can see that affecting his throwing ability later in that game. So like I wonder if the Eagles will kind of, I don't know, be a little bit more cautious. Like again, like you said, he doesn't look right. Like they still ran him a lot, especially in that second half.
The QB sneaked him a couple times in that Niners game.
In the fourth quarter.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
I don't understand
that. Yeah, Nick Sirianni, yeah, he definitely has some Kyle Shanahan in him. Like, I don't care how hurt you are. Run, motherfucker. As RG3, Trey Lance, the hit list continues. So I'm interested to see what adjustments they make to how they design that offense, because I mean that RPO is pretty lethal. That's the main thing I'm worried about, honestly. As a Chiefs fan, is like, man, will they be able to stay disciplined, keep, stay in those lanes, keep him in the pocket and make him, like you said, make those deep seam throws. So, but if they're going to run him, 12, 15 times on the RPO or put him at risk, then, we'll see. Because Mr. Clark and Mr. Jones, like they know what their shoulder's like. So, and they're coming.
Yeah. Whatever we're gonna see these next 14 or 13 days now are really going to be the telling tale of how he recovers, the rehab process, all of that. So let's move on to some news that dropped this morning. The GOAT, Mr. Thomas Edward Brady, decided, I think, to hang it up for good. I mean, we'll wait a few days and see, but he posted an Instagram post on his page today and pretty much said he was walking away from the game today. And Tristan, just give me I want you to give me your thoughts on Tom Brady, man, his career, what he's done, how he's contributed to the game, man. Just give me your thoughts, man. Yeah, we can't hear you. You muted.
My bad. False start, just like Tom Brady last year. Tom Brady has had an interesting career because he became like a superstar and an MVP, like a superstar name and all that stuff before his production, like, was a superstar like quarterback, right? Like he doesn't really start getting major MVP consideration until age 30, to his age 30 season. But before that, he had already won 3 Super Bowls. You know what I'm saying? So that allowed us to look at him as, winner guy and champion guy and one of the best before his production actually caught up to like the hype. Once the production got there, literally, I start Tom Brady's like ascension to being the greatest quarterback of all time in the 2006 season, right? Most people start when Randy Moss gets there in 2007, but really, if you look at his 2006 season, they lose a lot of their top receivers. He's throwing to like guys like Renee Caldwell,
David Patton,
guy with the big ass. I just remember the guy with the big ass eyes when he dropped all those passes.
Richie Caldwell, Richie Caldwell.
Yeah, like guys like that. Like these are his major receivers, and he made it all the way to the AFC Championship game with those guys. Like again, the defense was still really good, but the defense was not as great as it was in those Super Bowl years prior. And he literally had to play above his overall talent level to that point to get them there. And then 2007, Randy Moss, Stallworth, Wes Welker, all those guys get there, and like the Brady we knew before is gone. Like he's now superstar, like Tom Brady. And he's had several different careers in the span of these 23 years. Like he had up and coming, just kind of riding the defense, somewhat game manager, but I can still make a play here and there in the clutch, to, I'm the man on this team, putting up big numbers, 50 touchdowns, here and there, to a pretty steep decline. Like there's about a good 4 to 5 year stretch where Tom Brady's not really that good, and he made it work. They still won some because the defense caught up when he was declining as a quarterback. And then you have like the Tampa Bay portion of it, to where there's a mix of Tom Brady being really good and Tom Brady looking like the 40-plus-year-old quarterback that he was. So he's had an amazing career. Like, I don't think we'll ever see a quarterback play until 45 and start pretty much his entire career, outside of his rookie year. And he's a great mixture of. There's so much nuance with his career, because we can't just say that he was carried by great teammates his whole career. We can't just say he was carried by a great defense his whole career. We also can't say that he carried a team his whole career, or even a large portion of it, right? But he's just been consistent in greatness. His competitiveness is legendary. His will to win is legendary. And his ability to come through in big moments is legendary. Like, he's one of the first that I remember us like really saying, like, hey, you can't give him too much time. That's too much time, right? Like, he was one of the first that I remember, obviously he and Peyton Manning, to where like that warning was so stark. Like, hey, you gave Brady too much time, right? It could be 45 seconds on the clock. You gave Brady too much time. So his legend is deserved. It's overhyped in some ways while also being deserved in a lot of ways. You just got to be really succinct when we talk about his career and what parts of his career we're talking about, because like I said, he's had 3 different careers.
I think also too, playing the Boston market, that really added to this legend, and a lot of times fabricated early on what he was. So I think that market really, really helped him in that way and added to the legend as Tom Brady. Just to go through some of his career stats, man. He's 251 and 82 as a starter. Career 64% passing completion percentage, 89,214 yards career wise. I can remember as a kid in the mid to late 90s, the all-time passing mark was like 57,000. That was set by Dan Marino and John Elway second. He's damn near lap stat with damn near 90,000 passing yards. 7.4 yards per attempt, 649 touchdown passes. So, yeah, it's a pretty amazing career, to say the least. Anthony, what are your thoughts, man, Tom Brady and his career in totality?
Like, I think when Brady got to ring 5, it was like, all right, you can't say anything anymore. Even if you didn't feel like he was the GOAT, it was like, you got to admit he's the GOAT. You know what I mean? Because I've always listened. Tom Brady is unarguably the GOAT. And I always say this in any sport. There's a difference between the greatest of all time and the best of all time. There's a difference between the greatest player and the best player you've ever seen. The greatest player is also one of the best, but they got all the accomplishments. Sometimes you get the best player you've ever seen and they don't reach the accomplishments, especially in a team sport. Tom Brady, and this is just, I don't like to bring, I'm not trying to bring my team into it, but you get a lot of debates on my team with quarterbacks. So I just always go, you look at, as a Raider fan, Carr's career. Half of his career, his defenses have given up 400 plus points in a season. I went through Tom Brady's career. His defense has never in his entire career given up 400 points in a season. Half of his career, or near half, they haven't given up 300 points in a season. Most of his career has stellar defenses. So he's been very fortunate as a player. That to play in New England, to play in that division, he's been very fortunate, but he's been great. He's done what he was supposed to do. There's been other people who have been in similar situations that haven't gotten it done. the fact that he was able to win 3 Super Bowls very early in his career, I think gave way to. I think we'll never see that his career trajectory again, where he was, like you said, he wasn't great, like superstar status when he won those first 3 Super Bowls. But because he won those first 3 Super Bowls, it allowed him to become great. They gave him the cushion to say, he's a 3-time Super Bowl winning quarterback. We're not going to move on from him, or we're not even going to look for somebody else, even though there at that time might be more talented quarterbacks in the league. And then you go, we're just going to allow him to get better. We got great defenses. We're going to keep it close. We're going to allow him to do certain things. But, years where other guys are throwing 4,000 yards, he's throwing 3,500. Nobody's saying anything. It's legitimate, but it's not great. And then all of a sudden, like you said, you get to 2006, you get to 2007. Now all of a sudden, he's throwing for 4,700 yards. He's throwing for 35, 40 touchdowns. And he's worked himself from being a winner to being great. And he's been so long where he was a good quarterback that was a winner, to where the second half of his career, which since he's played this many years, he's got the good part of his career and he's got the half of his career where he's been amazing and he's been one of the best quarterbacks you've ever seen. And you can stack them on top of each other as one long career and as 2 separate careers. And so to play the way he has with longevity and to never, like, he's dipped, but he ain't dipped. We've seen quarterback, like a couple years ago, Aaron Rodgers, I think, threw for like 21 touchdowns or 23 touchdowns in the season. And then he went back up. Brady's never dipped that low. Brady's always consistently been 28, 29. He's just been really good his whole career, especially once he hit that mark.
It makes you wonder too, like, because I this morning I went through a lot of his teams. There was a 10-year gap where he didn't win. He went to Super Bowl, but he didn't win. And you look at the draft picks, man, the draft picks that Belichick missed on, especially on the offense side of the ball, at receiver, at tight end for getting Gronk. They missed on like 7 receivers, man, in the first 3 rounds of the draft. Each of those 7 drafts that 10-year period. It makes you wonder, man, if they had hit on half those guys, like the Chad Browns, the guy from Florida, there was a guy from Arizona State a few years ago. I think he just got a couple of Patriots this past season. But those about 7 receivers, man, that just didn't pan out. And I don't think Belichick doesn't get the criticism that he should get when it comes to the draft. Defensive prowess, preparation, when it comes to like putting together a game plan, taking the opposition's best option or weapon away, he's A1. Belichick's A1 at that. But when it comes to scouting, drafting, and developing offensive talent, he misses the mark, and it just makes you wonder what more Brady could have done with those numbers that he's compiled in his career, and it just, I don't know. And again with Belichick, man, I know with the breakup and everything, he hired a defensive coordinator to be his OC, and we don't criticize him enough, and we shouldn't let the cachet that he's built to like dismiss that and let that be okay. That you sat there, that's an old school Bengals move, or old school Raiders move, or old school like Cardinals move. Like, you don't. Why would you hire a defensive coordinator to be your OC? And I don't know.
He wasn't a good DC. Like, he was a shitty DC. Like, for real. Like, he was a shitty DC, head coach, and OC. Like, he's hit the holy trinity of like being a coach.
It's like at this point he's just throwing wet paper towels up at the ceiling. He's trying to see what sticks. Like, and when you built up that cash, like you said, you built up the cachet, but when you winning gets you that, it affords you not only the opportunity, but just the ability to kind of do what you want to do. Like, because at this point, nothing he does is going to tarnish his legacy. There's nothing he can do. Then you're like, oh, he really wasn't that good a coach. No, it's like he's Bill Belichick. Like, he's won countless rings as a head coach. There's nothing that you can say that's going to be like, Yeah, but at the end of his career, nah, he is who he is. It's kind of like Greg Popovich. Like you watch Greg Popovich now, he's still a great coach, but he's won so many titles. It doesn't matter what he does. It doesn't matter who he trades away or who he brings in or what kind of lineups he play. You're like, yeah, but it's great. It's Greg Popovich. So at this point, it's Bill Belichick. Does that mean he gets to keep his job forever? No. But as far as his legacy goes, it's really no tarnishing. It's already set.
But I do want to bring this point too, like his coaching tree, they have not been successful. Like look at Josh McDaniels. When he went to Denver, he flamed out. Charlie Weiss flamed out. Your DC was in Detroit, flamed out. You know the guy before the guy before him, I think went 9-7 or 8-8 and then missed the playoffs. He got fired, and then they gave him like a 2-3 year run, and he was under 500. I think he was like 300 doing his time as a head coach. So it makes me wonder, man. Like, is it Belichick being the brain trust and those guys just riding his coattails? Because nobody has been successful as a head coach. Joe Judge, the special teams coach who went to New York, he got fired after it was a season or two. Like these are laughable firings.
Yeah,
under his coaching.
My theory on that is Bill Belichick is a distinct figure. Like he has a distinct way of doing things, and I think it's natural. He's the greatest head coach of all time. I think it's very natural for assistants, young assistants, even older assistants to look at that level of success and say, I'm going to be just like him. Right. So you literally see it in every press conference when these guys get hired. Like they get asked a bunch of questions about the Patriot way and these things. And they preach these tenets that come from like the ideology or the psychology of Bill Belichick. And like he can do that because he's Bill Belichick and you can't do that. So like these guys have to find their own way of doing things to be successful. And they spend so much time trying to emulate Bill Belichick. And again, what have we been talking about? Like the situation for the Patriots to be so dominant as they were was perfect. Like, you know, perfect coach, perfect defense, right quarterbacks, all these things. And those guys don't have those. They don't come into those situations, right? The most successful guy on his tree, funnily as it may be, has been Romeo Crennel, probably. Like I think he's been the most solid of the Belichick tree. So we'll see. Like, you know, McDaniels. I don't think McDaniels is as bad as his record shows. But at some point, man, at some point he has to stand on his own too, and like really forge out, and he just hasn't been able to do that.
I don't want to make a Raiders podcast, but Anthony, speak. I mean, I know you watched the whole season, man. We spoke offline plenty of times. Your frustrations, man. About what are your thoughts on Josh McDaniels, man? And do you think he has a chance to like improve what he did this past season as a head coach?
No, this is my problem with Josh McDaniels. I think Josh McDaniels is so like he said it, like his arrogance in Denver is what was his downfall. And you've heard Denver players who were there talk about the stuff he was saying and the things he would think, oh, it don't matter who our quarterback is, y'all got me. Like he's come down a little bit, but I don't think he's come down enough to where he respects everything and everybody you have to have around you and the work that they have to put in and how good they have to be in order for you to be successful. I think he still feels like, I got this. What I'm going to do is going to work. And you watch them throw, I watched them throw that quarterback under the bus with 2 weeks to go to save face. And I've seen reports and things that have come out about the quarterback afterwards that are contradictory to what he's been for 9 years. So it's like, why would this come out now? All of a sudden, there was a report that came out that said he didn't like the tough coaching. I'm like, he just got through having 3 years with John Gruden yelling in his face every 5 minutes. Now all of a sudden you come out of here as from a coordinator and you the tough. That don't make sense. So I feel like Josh McDaniels is not beyond himself enough to be a good head coach. I think he's a coordinator. I think he's an offensive coordinator. He's a decent play caller, but as a head coach, to put your own ego aside in order to do what you have to do, I don't see it. I don't see it happening. I think there'll always be a scapegoat. There'll be somebody else who it's this person's fault, or this person's not getting it done, or this person's not doing what I think they should be doing. You're not adjusting. And I thought he would be the type of head coach that would adjust to his players. But it seems he's so his system orientated that I don't see it being successful for him.
And he had going to the season, man, the offense looked well. I mean, you had, you brought in DA from Green Bay. Carr came off of with what happened with Gruden and all the drama. He was able to bring them to the playoffs last season with all that drama that went on. I mean, that great your tight end Waller, Josh Jacobs, who led the league in rushing this past season. So you had pieces. That to work with if you're Josh McDaniel, and I know they blew a lot of 20-point leads this past season as well. That kind of hurt them, and to me that speaks to preparation and mental toughness, not from your players, but leading from your head coach as well. To be in that situation so many times and to falter in those scenarios, that tells me a lot about coaching and your staff not doing what they need to do to put those players in the best position to be successful. So, but we'll see the season, man, and we'll see what they do. It seems like he has a long rope with the owner Mark. So we shall see. Let's get to the AFC Championship game now. So the Chiefs have had issues, to say the least, with the Bengals the last 3 meetings. Losing all 3 meetings, I think 2 in Cincy, 1 in KC, which was the AFC Championship game last year, and all those losses were by 3 points. And KC got severely outscored in those 3 games in the second half of those games. Had double-digit leads in those first 3 games and just faltered. And there were a lot of talk going to the AFC Championship game this past Sunday after the Cincinnati buried Buffalo, and I think it was Bates, the safety, who said, we're going to Burrowhead. We're going to Burrowhead. And all week long, man, we're just shit talking left and right from a team that hasn't won anything. Burrowhead is the mayor coming out and proclaiming that, Mahomes' daddy is Joe Burrow, and DNA test this. And it was quite laughable, man. And I think that didn't bother me. I'm not gonna lie. That didn't bother me. I'm a Chiefs. Tristan and I are both Chiefs fans. What bothered me is that it seems like every season, the media tries to find this next Brady Manning matchup with Mahomes. Last season, it was 2 seasons ago, it was Herbert, and then this past season, it was Allen, and towards the middle to the end of the season, it was Burrow. And it's like, I think with greatness, when you have a guy that's continually elite and top of his game every single year, I think people get bored with that, and you tend not to appreciate it. Mahomes is 27 years old. Mahomes has been in the AFC Championship game since he's been a 4-time starter in 18, 100% of the time. He hasn't missed. Yeah. And not only that, he's played it at home. His team has hosted the Arrowhead Invitational each of the last 5 years, with now 3 Super Bowl appearances in the last 4 years now. And for some reason, we try to move off of him and find the next pretty toy to put over Mahomes. Now, it'll be a different story if Mahomes was struggling and faltering, his numbers are suffering. He's putting up 320 a game, a couple touchdowns a game, and he's been one of the most accurate quarterbacks in this league. And with this media trying to find this next great quarterback, man, it's frustrating, because I don't remember them doing it with Jordan early on in his career. I don't remember them with it. I don't remember them doing it to Montana in the 80s, going to the 90s before he got hurt. What is up with that? Before we get to the game, man, what is up with that, Tristan, about with the media trying to find the next guy to put over Mahomes?
I mean, this is not something specific to Patrick Mahomes. This is as long as we've had great players, especially great players that stand out above, like, standard deviation of like their positions or their peer groups. We're always looking for the next thing, right? Like at Michael Jordan, and we were looking for the next thing. Like, could this person be the next Jordan? Or we're looking to recreate things, right? Always looking to recreate things. And a lot of it's manufactured. Like the Brady Manning thing was natural. They were in the same division, you know what I'm saying, for a long time. Like they played each other twice a year and then potentially in the playoffs. So we didn't have to manufacture a rivalry between Peyton Manning and Tom Brady. It was there. Bird Magic, like again, they played in the championship game in college. They met in the finals. Like these things didn't have to be manufactured. But with Mahomes, it's crazy because I think it's different with football, especially quarterbacks, because in football, in the NFL, you're not supposed to have a team that is consistently good and is making it this deep into the playoffs every year. That's just not how this world is supposed to be. Like basketball, we accept it because we understand you have the most talent, you should win the majority of the games, you should make it far in the playoffs every year, right? This is an expectation. With football, because there's so many different factors, injuries, salary caps, trades, blah, blah, blah. Just guys having disappointing years. Like it's so foreign to us for a team to just constantly year after year after year, right? So that's why when Brady was on his way out in New England, like we were ushering Patrick Mahomes in, like, and now that Patrick Mahomes has become establishment, that's another thing. We hate establishment, right? We hate establishment. And the Chiefs are establishment at this point, especially in the AFC. But like now that we have that, we just naturally have to find something that upsets the establishment, right? I'm a Warriors fan. Like I see it. We had people out here saying Damian Lillard, who I love to death, was a better long-range shooter than Stephen Curry. Think about that. Say that out loud. Say that out loud. Like it should be blasphemous that
who the fuck is saying that?
Anybody on planet Earth who's ever lived, like I compare. You know what? I compare it almost 1-to-1. Steph and Dame and Pat and Joe Burrow, right? But all four of these are excellent A+ players, right? One has both the team accomplishments and the individual statistics. The other one, slightly younger, is doing a lot of the same things, but it's like 90% of it, right? And the 90% looks so great that, yeah, it starts to look plausible that this person could be as good or better. But with Patrick Mahomes, what he showed in this AFC Championship game, what Steph constantly shows in the playoffs and finals games and stuff like that, is like those little things in the margins. And those things in the margins make a world of a difference when you're doing it consistent, right? So seeing him, bringing the team back with like less than a minute, like those things, that we should not think of that as something that's commonplace, right? That is a amazing outlier in the span of a football game. If you look at like win probability, look at the win probability for the Chiefs in the divisional game against Buffalo when they got the ball back in overtime, right? The win probability was super low, right? But on the flip side, the large majority of us expected them to drive down the field. That's the difference between Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes and Joe Burrow. And again, it's that really small 10% that makes this like a huge gap in a football game. So that's what we saw in the AFC Championship game. We saw one guy on one leg who consistently made the plays outside of that, one turnover. But whatever he could give, he did it at the max, right? And I love Joe Burrow. I think Joe Burrow has as much of a case as anybody to be the second best quarterback in the league. Loved him since college. Loved him that we talked about it before he was drafted. I was like, hey, I believe in Joe Burrow.
Yeah.
I saw enough. Like, I don't care what happened in Ohio State. I don't care. He's only had one, good year as a starter in college. I know what I saw, that moxie, that poise. I'm so tired of the word poise, but I'm gonna say it. Like skill level, like just the ability to step up in big games. We saw that, but like he can just be a great quarterback. He can be a really, really great quarterback in his league and still be nowhere close to Patrick Mahomes. And we saw that. We saw the marginal stuff was the difference between the Chiefs and the Bengals in that championship game, and that's why they're going to the Super Bowl.
And to be honest, man, like Burrow he should have won this game. Like throughout the game, the Chiefs lost 3 receivers, but to injury. Like they didn't. Like Marcus Kemp is a special teamer.
And specific to Joe Burrow, they lost their top receiver.
Yeah. like you have Higgins, you have Chase, you have I mean they lost Boyd, but you're going against a rookie backfield, a rookie secondary.
I mean cornerback, the top cornerback. Sneed.
Yeah,
no, that's what I mean.
Yeah,
not receiver.
Yeah, like Jerry Sneed. So you lost all these components throughout the game, and you still lost. I mean, we have to take account of like the little things that that Mahomes does that a lot of young quarterbacks don't really see or showcase on the field yet, at least not till like years later. And I'm not saying Burrow won't be great. I mean, he's the second best quarterback in football. Like I firmly believe that. Like Cincinnati is going to be a championship contender. Well, give or take if the owner spends money, because he's notorious for not spending money. We shall see. But his talent alone, the window's going to be open for a while. So, Anthony, what was your thoughts, man, on all the hoopla going into this week, going to that game, and what are your thoughts between Mahomes and Burrow coming out of that game?
I mean, I get the, like you said, the hoopla. The Chiefs, because the Chiefs have been so dominant, they're looking for somebody to say, you at least these guys can compete. The fact that, Cincinnati had won the last 3 games that they played, they go over the top. They're like, oh no, they're their kryptonite. They're the team they can't beat. Da 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 da. And it's like, no, but going into those games, now you don't know. Most of the time, when the Chiefs play somebody, you're like, the Chiefs are gonna win. You legitimately can pick the Cincinnati Bengals when they play each other, and it's not you, for lack of a better term, hating. It's not you just trying to pick somebody else because you don't like the Chiefs. The Cincinnati Bengals have a legitimate chance to beat the Chiefs when they play each other. That don't mean Joe Burrow better than Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes is Patrick Mahomes. It sucks because he's in my division. So yeah, I hate that, but he's the best player in the game. He's the best quarterback in the game. They're always trying to find, it's like when we talk about this, it's the LeBron type thing. How many years you've been trying to say this player is now better than him? No, he's not. This player, you may have a better season than him one year. Don't mean you're a better player, because over the next 3 years, you're going to come back down to earth. He's going to stay where he at. He's the best. He's the best in the game. You got rid of, I think, one of the 5 best wide receivers in all of football. And he still is going to win MVP. He's still in the Super Bowl. Like it, and let me give credit to Andy Reid. Like, Andy Reid has his clock management issues, but offensively, as a play caller and conceptually, what he puts on the field, it's amazing. Like, and it fits Patrick Mahomes perfectly. And Patrick Mahomes, like he said, he's only gotten better from the time he came in the league. And it seems hard to believe because he was so good coming into the league. But now he even said it. I don't have Tyreek Hill anymore. I can't just go, he's going up top. I'm just going to throw it out and let him run up under it. Now I got to know who to go to in what situations, and it's only made him a better quarterback. With that being said, at some point, they're going to re-up with more talent offensively. Like, they have to pay him now. So now they can't pay Tyreek Hill 20-something million. But at some point, they're going to draft another guy who's going to be really good. And you're not going to just have, we picked Valdez-Scantling off the Heat. We just picked Juju up off the Heat because nobody wanted him. We grabbed the guy in Sky Moore in the 4th round or 3rd round, and we think he could be something. But I'll tell you what, Kadarius Toney, I was praying the Raiders traded for Kadarius Toney. So now you got a 1st round talent who second year. Now he's going into his third year, but he's got half the year with Patrick Mahomes. So next year, he's probably going to come in to the league or come into the season as Mahomes number one.
Mm-hmm.
So now you got another first round. You know what I mean? A guy like McCall Hardman, who they went after, didn't pan out to be that guy, though he can sometimes be a deep threat, even though it's just he's supposed to be a deep threat, but he's not a bad. He's a decent piece. He's somebody you could bring back. But Kadarius Toney is that guy where it's like all of a sudden he's a top 10 receiver because he's a first round pick and with first round pick talent. And they're going to re-up with guys that they draft on offense that's talented that they don't have to spend a ton of money on. And that's just going to make Patrick Mahomes go from I've learned how to be good with decent receivers and decent talent to now my talent is back up at the top of the board. And what are you going to do to stop me? So to me, with the Chiefs, you have to pray that defense drops back down to, bottom half, bottom third of the league where they're, 28, 27, 28th in defense again. And hope even then, hope you can outscore him. But does he average like 31.2 points a game throughout his career? It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's an NFL record in the first 5 years of career. It's the record.
He's going to put up points. Andy Reid is going to call plays to put up points. He's not a conservative coach where it's like, oh, we're up 2 touchdowns. We're going to run the ball the entire second half. It's like, no, we're going to score 3 more touchdowns. We're going to make it impossible for you to catch up to us because we're never going to stop attacking you. And so that's a perfect marriage. My one concern as far as career trajectory with Mahomes, not as that he's not going to continue to be a Hall of Fame, but how long is Andy Reid going to continue to coach? How long until he says, all right, I want another. It could be this year. He could win the Super Bowl and be like, I'm going out on the, I'm going out with my trophy. And now do you have that same creative, gutsy play caller for Patrick Mahomes that Andy Reid was? So that's the only thing. But he's still Hall of Fame. He's not going anywhere. He's going to continue
to
Hall
of Famer today.
12 years.
He's a Hall of Famer today. What you just said, right. First of all, everything you said was poignant, top to bottom. But that brings me to one of my biggest surprises of the year, which is the Chiefs' young secondary.
Mm-hmm.
I remember Frank very clearly boasting about this draft class. I'm very iffy on young secondary defensive backs. I just got to see it, man. They struggle. They struggle locating the ball on deep threats. They they struggle tackling so many things, and they did have their struggles throughout the year and even in this game. But every single rookie that the Chiefs drafted made a play. If they got on the field, they made a play in that game. And that was one of the biggest surprises because one of the things I always worry about is, can they get off the field on third? And they give up so many third and longs.
Yeah.
Right. And I always want to I'm pacing around the house during this game. Every third down, I just get up and I just start walking. I don't even want to look at some point. I got so damn nervous. I didn't even want to look because it's 3rd and 16. I'm like, fuck. What is Jamar Chase going to do? Find Jamar Chase. And then eventually by the end of the fourth quarter, those guys, they learned from their mistakes. They gave up a 4th and 6 because they could not locate the ball. Next possession, they located the ball and got a pick. So the Chiefs secondary is my biggest surprise of this season. And I'm hoping, give me one more. I hope they're not rookies anymore. Right. No. At this point, I want to see them take that and build. You just played the best receiver in the league, in my opinion. I want to see them do the same thing to Devontae and AJ.
And I want to say this: Spagnuolo has been very much maligned throughout his tenure with the Chiefs. I'm not going to lie with that. Sometimes he comes in and his arrogant play calling and play setup. I remember last season in the finale against the Bengals, the regular season. He decided to go man on Jamar Chase and did not adjust. Jamar Chase had 110 yards in the first quarter and didn't adjust. He kept Travis Ward on him, and Jamar Chase went on and had 229 yards receiving and 3 touchdowns in that game. And sometimes the arrogancy of Spagnuolo drives me nuts. But I will say this about Spinola and Reed: they have a prototype in the secondary that they wanna implement, especially in the AFC. The big stout corners, 6'1", 6'2", wiry guys who can get in the chest of other receivers. And if you look at the draft, man, even this past year, with the secondary, Trent McDuffie is the shortest guy at 5'9", but L'Jarius Sneed 2 years ago, he's 6 foot, 200. And then the other cornerback, Jalen Watson, he's 6'1", 190. Brian Cook at safety, he's 6'2", 205. So they have an identity of what they want to do with these big rangy corners. And if you look at their drafts the last couple of years, all these guys have made pivotal plays throughout the season or have become impact players and Pro Bowlers. Going back to 2021, Nick Bolton, who's a linebacker from Missouri, he led the league in tackles. Our second round, Creed Humphrey, who's our center now, he was a Pro Bowler his first 2 years in the league. And then going to this past year, and then Trey Smith, a 6th-round pick, a guard at Oklahoma, Pro Bowler this season. And then if you go into this year, George Karlaftis, DN from Purdue, he started off slow the first half of the season, but finished the season with 7.5 sacks. The last 6 games, he had a sack in each of those last 6 games of the season. Trent McDuffie, who missed the first 5 weeks of the season, he became an impact player, made a big play in the Jacksonville Jaguars game last week. Brian Cook, who made the tip pass for Jalen Watson to pick up that ball in the fourth quarter. Joshua Williams, the guy who picked the ball off in the fourth quarter this past game, and Jalen Watson, who had a pick 6 against the Chargers in week 2, and an interception last week against Jacksonville, interception this week against the Bengals. So these guys are making impact plays, and not to mention Isaiah Pacheco, who didn't start till week 10 and became a primetime player for them as well. So I think the Chiefs are doing it the way that so many NFL franchises want to hit on. The first year of a guy getting paid, especially a quarterback making $45 million a year or $40 million a year, you got to get guys who you can draft, who are guys with controllable assets for the next 3 to 4 to 5 years. And the Chiefs did that. Now, did the Chiefs take L's with Tyreek Hill being gone and Honey Badger being gone? Maybe so. I mean, it's hard to replace a guy like Tyreek Hill, generational talent. But to be able to find guys, not just in the first, second round, but late in the draft. Pacheco's 7th round pick. Jalen Watson, 7th round pick. Creed Humphrey, 2nd round pick. Trey Smith, 6th round pick. So they're hitting all throughout the draft, man, and filling these guys in to go along with Pat Mahomes, and they're gonna be a problem. And the 21 and 22 draft class, once they get another training camp under their belts going to next year, they're gonna be even better. And that's why the future is so bright. And to add, they have 13 draft picks in 2023. So I'm sure that they could move up, get an impact guy, or stay where they're at. But I think Brett Veach is a GM that guys try to model out there as far as getting guys who controllable contracts, and then adding them and hope they develop along with their impact elite players.
Yeah. The reason you see me shaking my head when you say Isaiah Pacheco is because I was dreaming of drafting Isaiah Pacheco, and he was there. I'm watching the draft like Pacheco. Raiders select running back, and I'm like, we gonna get him. Britton Brown. I'm like, you got a 4'3" B running back who's 200 plus pounds. He's the perfect prototype runner. Just draft him. Instead, you're gonna draft a guy who runs a 4'6", and he's a special teams player. That's why you see me shaking my head when it's like, oh, we got Isaiah Pacheco. It's like, yeah, that must be nice.
Hey man, ain't too late, baby. Go come east, bro.
Man, this is franchise, man. It's just.
I want to talk about the Chiefs' defense in this game, the front seven. So I looked at some stats. So last year in the AFC Championship game, they had 1 sack in that game. They couldn't pressure Burrow to save their life. In the game this year, they had 1 sack. That was Karlaftis. In the first quarter of the game Sunday, they had 3 sacks and 6 pressures on Burrow in the first quarter. They had 0 yards to the offense in the first quarter. And I gotta say, man, Chris Jones, for me, outside of Mahomes, was and Tristan mentioned this too. He was the player, the benefactor of this game because Chris Jones played in 12 playoff games prior, had no sacks, and he was much maligned this past week. Guys saying he need to step up, but you have to understand the three technique defensive tackle guys like him and guys like Aaron Donald, they're seeing double teams every single play. So for me, yeah, like you can judge those 2 guys as far as Aaron Donald and Chris Jones off of sacks, but you shouldn't really do that, like, because that's not their job. Their job is to take on double teams and free up the other guys along the line. I mean, Chris Jones had 15.5 sacks. That's unheard of for an interior lineman, and he's so special that I think 6 of his sacks came from the outside. Like, they move him around a lot on the D line to create matchups on third downs.
His last sack came off the edge.
Yeah, come off the edge. So they do a great job of moving him around, but not just him, man. Like, playoff Frank came back. Frank Clark has been very much maligned the last couple of years. Like, there was questions about cutting him this past offseason because the production just wasn't there, and he struggled. He struggled with issues this year, off the field issues, inconsistencies of getting to the quarterback. And the last 2 games of playoffs, man, he showed the fuck up. He has showed up. And if we can get that Frank again, that showed up against Jacksonville, and the Bengals going into the Super Bowl, we have a shot. We have a quality shot. And George Karlaftis, man, 22 years old, 21 years old. It's a baby. He's still learning the position, So once he gets right, that was the star unit of the game, because they really gave Burrow pressure, because we've heard for months now. Oh, Burrow's online. It's much maligned. Guys out for the season. They had 3 guys out against the Bills. They cut through the Bills defense like Swiss cheese. It wasn't even close. And I think 1 guy came back for this game, but they were still down 2 starters. And for the first time, really since the Browns game in October, where they lost like 35-0 or whatever, the defense actually took advantage of the Bengals' weakness of not being able to. Of getting to the quarterback and creating pressure and creating timing issues. So Tristan, what are your thoughts on the D-line playing in this game?
I said that Chris Jones was the most dominant player in this game, in a game where Patrick Mahomes on one leg at 320, 2 touchdowns, no picks, and QBR of like 97 or some shit like that. Chris Jones, I don't even care about the sacks. There was just so many plays where he would like bum rush 2 dudes and force Burrow out of the pocket without a clear running lane to scramble. And he would he would force Joe Burrow into somebody else to make that sack. Frank Clark's first 2 sacks were all Chris Jones double teams.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Spagnuolo did a great job of creating those one-on-one matchups to where Frank Clark could just eat. But part of that was, hey, 2 dudes are going with Chris Jones, and Chris Jones is not just letting that double team keep him back. He's pushing them into the backfield, creating a new line of scrimmage, and it flustered Burrow early. They adjusted, and then they just kind of set Chris Jones loose in the fourth quarter, and he stepped the fuck up. He stepped up in so many times. He stepped up after the Mahomes fumble. He stepped up after the 3 and outs. He really just came through when needed to come through, and he was the MVP of that game, in my opinion. Absolutely.
I want to talk about some surprises this past NFL season, some letdowns this past NFL season, man. Anthony, man, what was your number one surprise this NFL season? Whether it was a player, a team, what was one of your top surprises?
Probably the Eagles, man, as far as my surprise. I mean, the Raiders played the Eagles last year, and I watched that game, and I had no doubt that the Raiders were going to beat them. I didn't think they were good enough to compete with what the Raiders were last year. And this year they came in, and it's they've added some pieces, but okay, the big name free agent or big name, player acquisition was AJ Brown. And I'm like, there's no way AJ Brown is going to take them from what they were last year to what they have been this year. And of course health, but I did not see this coming. I thought they would be good in a potential playoff team. I thought they would be more in a match with Dallas as far as the NFC East, probably a little bit better, but around there, maybe 11 wins, maybe 12 wins. But I had no idea that they would be this much better than they were last year. They're probably my biggest surprise team in the NFL this year.
Yeah, for me, Jacksonville and the Giants were my biggest surprise. I thought that Doug Peterson would be an upgrade over Urban Meyer. Shocker. But just to see them like make that jump in the end of the season, they really could control that division for a while if they want to. And the Giants, same thing. Brian Daboll came through and unlocked Daniel Jones, who just continues to surprise people that he can run well. I'm like, did you watch him at Disney? That's all he could do. That's literally all he could do. And I think I love when coaches come in and say, hey, what does this quarterback do well? I'm going to focus on that. And I think the same thing happened with Jalen Hurts. It's like, we're going to focus on what he does well and not really harp on the things that he's not great at yet and just let him develop. So Trevor Lawrence, I think that playoff game against the Chargers was like a fork in the road for him. It's like he could have those 4 interceptions. He could have, Turner. He could have been Baker Mayfield. You know what I'm saying? And that just would have been him. But he was Doug Peterson continued to believe in him. He kept chunking that shit, and they got a win. And I think that's going to set up the rest of his career pretty nicely. So, Jags, Giants, those are my 2 surprises of the year.
I think my surprise was Geno Smith in the whole Seattle situation with Russell Wilson. We've seen Geno Smith the last 8-9 years. I mean, he's had stops in New York, stops both New York teams, and Seattle, and he filled in. He did amicably well last year when Russell went down for those 3 or 4 games with the finger. And I must say, man, if you would have told me going into this season that Geno Smith was going to outplay Russell Wilson with the weapons that Russ has in Denver, and in that defense that he has in Denver, I would have called you a fool. And I would have put money on that. I would have lost my money as well. Very, very surprised by Geno Smith. Took him to the playoffs as well. And for a half, we're hanging with the Niners. Before his fumble, they were hanging with the Niners. And my second surprise would be Jacksonville. Just the Urban Meyer shit, man, from last year, man. That team looked like it didn't belong. Urban Meyer fucked that team off. Lawrence looked lost as a rookie. Didn't even have identity. And just the horrible things we heard about him going into the season about Urban Meyer was just, for them to wheel off with 7 out of 8 and win the division, man, it was just simply amazing. What about disappointments for you guys, man, for the season?
I guess I'll start it off. I mean, I got a few disappointments. Listen, Raiders were 10-7 last year, and the only reason they were 10-7 was because of numerous debacles through the course of the season. Like, they had one of the best offenses in the league in the first half of the year last year. Coach gets fired. Number 1 pick, wide receiver kills somebody. So on and so on and so on. So yes, they faltered. Not to mention their number 1 target, Darren Waller, missed half the season. So yeah, their points dropped, but they were still going to make it into the season. You brought all of this back. Darren Waller comes back. You got everybody basically coming back. You bring in Devontae Adams, one of the best receivers in the league, and you can't win games down the stretch. You blow leads. You went from having one of the worst defenses in the league to having still one of the worst defenses in the league, but significantly better than what you had been, to back to one of the worst defenses in the league after you came in and got rid of all of the people that you wanted to get rid of, to bring in the people that you liked, and and you're horrible. So yeah, Raiders, Josh McDaniels, whole coaching staff, whole front office disappointment. Another front office, Tennessee. This is a number one seed last year. You trade away AJ Brown. You don't do anything. You draft a quarterback in the second round. Why?
Mr. Malik Willis, yeah.
Why? Why not re-up the offensive talent that you just depleted? Why would you go draft a quarterback who's not going to – the only reason he got on the field is because your quarterback that's starting got hurt. Like, what are you doing in the front office? It makes no sense. So that's a big disappointment to me. I don't like a lot of stupid shit. Like, so a lot of these coaches in front of, they make things a lot harder than they have to be, and they kind of coat themselves in the they know more than you know as fans and you know as people who are not personnel and not employed by actual NFL teams, but it's just like you still watch some of the stuff they do and you're like, I could have told you that was dumb. So, Tennessee, the Raiders, I had somebody else that's skipping my mind right now who is just complete total disappointments. But yeah, those are probably my two biggest disappointments.
For me, I have three. Two of them I'm gonna kind of bunch together. AFC West was supposed to be a juggernaut.
Russell Wilson was my other
and
go ahead.
The Chargers, and you can include Herbert in there, but like they were supposed. I was expecting a bloodbath in the AFC West, and for various reasons, both of those teams just weren't able to just meet the bill. And my biggest disappointment this year, it hurts. One, Joshua Allen. So it took a while for me to get on the Josh Allen train. Again, he just didn't have the tape, from Wyoming. Came in, was not accurate, was, skittish in the pocket. Credit, all credit due. He worked himself up to become accurate in ways that we don't see quarterbacks become accurate at this level. Mm-hmm. He worked himself up to be one of the great quarterbacks in his league. I say this with the understanding that quarterback progress is not always linear, right? You can even look at Mahomes. 18, he's here. 19, he rises. 2020 is a slight dip, right? Because circumstances change, right? You lose, offensive line is trash. 2021, you could kind of say it was a plateau because of like the way teams were playing them, right? Cover two, taking away all the deep stuff, and you just have to make those adjustments. Quarterback play, quarterback progress, statistics are not linear, right? But what I saw with Josh Allen this year, it wasn't like statistics. I don't really care about that. Buffalo won enough. It's like a lot of the mental things, a lot of the marginal things I talked about at the beginning of this, with Joe Burrow and Mahomes and so on and so forth. A lot of the marginal things he just really was not great at. The turnovers, poor mistakes. Again, a lot of those patented Josh Allen boneheaded moves. You know what I'm saying? That pop up 2-3 times in a game and sometime in the worst moments. That disappointed me the most because I expected him to be the biggest foil for the Chiefs, in Mahomes and in a defense. And he just wasn't able to do it. And he hasn't had enough great seasons to where I can be confident that next year won't be a dip or he just won't plateau from where he was this season. So those are my big disappointments.
I will say my disappointment will probably my first top two disappointments off top is Miami, and I'm gonna tell you why. The mishandling of Tua Tagovailoa was very disappointing. It might have been week 3. I can't remember which week. The first concussion. He's wobbly, like he's clearly concussed, and they brought him back in that game. He finishes that game. And then they have a Thursday night game that following week, and the NFL came out and said he had a concussion. He was actually concussed, but was never taken out. And then It was the Bengals game. That was the Bengals game. And then that same game, he gets hurt again, and he's out for weeks at a time. And the situation, how you handle that with your franchise quarterback is so surprising to me. And with the concussion protocol and all these provisions that's not put in today's NFL regarding concussions, to mishandle that so severely, he could have died in the field. Like it was like his hands were like he was all jacked up and he could have died. That could have been a huge lawsuit. So the mishandling with that, and I gotta talk about this, man. The Jets will always jet. Zach Wilson. And don't get me wrong, there's always going to be busts. I get it. But the level of this busting that this man did, like he had a horrible, I think he had 120 and 3 picks against New England. And a press conference, this man says, and I'm paraphrasing, it's not my fault. I mean, that's not on me. It's a team thing. Like, and to me, it's common sense. If you're a quarterback and you don't play well, let's say you play marginal. Most quarterbacks are gonna say, "That's on me, man. I gotta be better. I'm the quintessential leader of this team, and how I go is how the team goes. I gotta be the ringleader." And for him to not take accountability for how poorly he played, and that wasn't just the first time he's played poorly. He's played poorly almost every start he's had. He's played poorly. I can't remember a signature good Zach Wilson game. And then so he gets benched for like 4 or 5 games. Mike White comes in, and he plays good football, but because of New York, they overpraise him as being a potential standard franchise starter, and he gets hurt. And they bring back Zach Wilson. Thursday game against Jacksonville. I think that's the game that started the winning streak. Plays poorly again, gets booed out of the goddamn stadium. Mm-hmm. So my disappointment is the Jets. Just the handling that, and just them being the Jets. Like, when are you going to be able to get a quarterback and hit on that, and be able to be viable again? And because they have a quality defense.
I would say they got everything else.
Yeah, they have a star in Breece Hall. I mean, Breece Hall was my fantasy back. He was killing before the ACL injury. They have Garrett Wilson, another young good receiver. So they have a lot of talent there. So yeah, man. So that's my disappointment. So I want to go ahead and wrap the show up, man. Thank you so much, man, for coming on. Come on the podcast, man. I appreciate it. For anybody who wants to, that's my dog in the background. For anybody that wants to go ahead and listen to our podcast or listen to any other shows on our podcast, please hit at Watchers Basement. We're on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, as well. Please like, subscribe, share, please, man. And let's grow the show. We had 200 subscribers. We're at 500 now. At Watchers Basement, give us a 5-star rating. And again, man, for myself, for Tristan, for Anthony, man, we are the Watchers in the Basement. I will holler at y'all later.
How about them?
Cheers.